Started. Welcome into an NFL Divisional Round edition of the RotoWire Sports Gambling Podcast, sponsored by our great friends over at BetMGM. Make sure, as you've been doing, hopefully, all season, you're using our promo code BETROTO, BETROTO. You can use that over at BetMGM.com, at the BetMGM app. You can receive up to $1,000 in bet credits if you use that promo code BETROTO. I'm Nick Whalen. With me, as always, John McKechnie from RotoWire. Jonathan, a little bit less of a busy week for you this time around. Last time we spoke on this podcast, you had just gotten back from the national championship game out on the West Coast, still basking in a second straight title, I would assume, for the Georgia Bulldogs. But our focus squarely now, Jonathan, is on the Elite Eight in the NFL. We got 4 absolute bangers coming at us this weekend.
I'm so excited. Yes, the bask continues, but the people, you do a great job of indulging me and tell my ridiculous Georgia stories. I think the people want to peek behind the curtain, the teal curtain, if you will. What was it like at Whalen Manor last Saturday night? Because I tuned in late. I tuned in when it was 17-0 and was like, holy smokes, not looking great, but I'm not going to rattle any cages here. And then, the game ends. I send you a text that is certainly not using language that we can say on this podcast, but very excited for you. But walk us through what exactly was going down up there.
It was a somber scene. That's for sure. Through the first quarter, into the second quarter, I had one of my best friends and his wife came over to watch the game. They're Packers fans. They don't really care at all, but they came to support me, and that's what's important. So I had to be on my best behavior. I can't be pacing around. I can't be throwing my little foam football at the couch. I can't be, I'm usually not too demonstrative. I'm not somebody where Molly has to go into the other room and worry about her safety. That's not going to be an issue, but I was just so downtrodden 6 minutes into the game that I was emotionless. I wasn't even sad. I was just like, wow, this is as a football fan, it's kind of incredible what we're witnessing. What if Trevor Lawrence throws 14 interceptions in this game? Because at one point he was on that kind of pace. So, did I ever really allow myself to believe that the Jaguars were going to win the game? No, I did not. By halftime, they had tacked on the one score before the half. It was 27-7. And yeah, you're doing the math and you're thinking, okay, maybe there's a chance. It is the Chargers. But the Chargers were receiving the second half kickoff. The Jags defense, it's hard to say. They didn't play well, but they were also in just horrible situation after horrible situation. So it's not like I felt great about coming out and getting a stop. But all of a sudden, I at no point did I turn the game off or anything, but it was such a strange comeback because there were no big plays. I guess you could count the long touchdown to Zay Jones, but even that one was 35 yards maybe. There wasn't a pick six. There wasn't a crazy fumble. There wasn't a muff punt. Well, there was for the Jags in the first half, but there wasn't this one play that it felt like the entire game swung. The Jags just kept chipping away and chipping away and chipping away. And all of a sudden the T formation's out on 4th down and there's Travis Etienne running for a gimme field goal. It was crazy.
That was so electric. I love a playoff comeback. And especially, a team like the Jaguars, a team I know you're a big fan of, is as a pseudo neutral observer is nice. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Saturday night NFL playoffs. My Sunday night didn't go as well, but I was kind of expecting a lot worse, frankly. But it sounds like, all things considered, it was an electric evening up there. And I'm not surprised that you're not on one of those government lists that sponsored by Walmart, that this guy is going to break his TV.
No.
Yeah, the TV's too important. I never understood that in the first place from those people, but I guess it's mostly Steelers fans anyway. But Either way, congratulations on the dub. If nothing else, that if we were doing this podcast a year ago today, would you have said that the Jags were going to be in the second round of the playoffs? Absolutely not.
I would have said that. I'm on the record 1 week ago today saying that they wouldn't be in the second round of the playoffs. I wouldn't have said it a week ago, a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, whatever distance of time you want to put on this. I would not have said it. No, not at all. It's completely improbable. But at the same time, I guess you could kind of call it like the Cinderella-esque run, but I think that's more because the Jags have been so bad for so long, and they've been like comically bad the last few years. But this is a pretty talented roster with a really good coach and a quarterback who has taken a major turn this season. So to me, it's like it doesn't feel like the Bengals last year, where all of a sudden you're like, whoa, this team might win the Super Bowl. Like I don't feel that way about the Jags, but I also feel like talent-wise, they're coming out of a bad division. Like it's not that crazy to me that the Jaguars ended up winning the AFC South and ended up beating a Chargers team that essentially lost the game on its own. Now, it would be significantly more surprising if they have any modicum of success this week at Arrowhead.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, similar to, well, with the Bengals, no one really even believed until they made it to the Super Bowl, because going into that Chiefs game last year, everyone was like, okay, like the run's over. They squeaked by the Raiders in what was kind of a forgettable first round game. And then they go into Tennessee and they beat, the weakest one seed in years. And yeah, honestly. And then, the magical second half happens at Arrowhead, and here we are. But, what I mean to say is that, there's a similar stage here, not the AFC Championship on the line, but anytime that you can beat Patrick Mahomes in January, it's a big accomplishment, of course.
I will say I'm surprised to see, and this is via Pro Football Reference, so there might be different lines depending on where you look, but the Chiefs were only 4-point favorites last year over Cincinnati in that AFC title game.
Pretty sharp on their part. I bet a lot of the money came in on the Chiefs for that one.
Yeah. Wait, no, never mind. Correction. I'm looking at the wrong game. That was in a regular season game. Excuse me. The Chiefs were 7-point favorites. Okay, that makes way more sense.
Yes. Okay. All right.
All right. Correction on the fly. I apologize.
We're back on.
Yep, we're back. All right, let's get back to what we do every week, John. And as the pool of games narrows, this becomes more and more difficult, as do our parlays and teasers that we'll get to at the end of the episode. But any lines of the 4 games that we have that struck you as notably too high or too low this week?
Well, I've been banging the drum on the Bengals for a while. So for them to be 5.5-point dogs in this spot, obviously you're going to be on the road in Buffalo, and the Bengals, I understand the arguments against them, right? Like the offensive line really banged up, suffered more attrition last week with the Jonah Williams injury. And they were outgained by Baltimore in that game, outpossessed by Baltimore, but they still found a way to win by way of Sam Hubbard just destroying
by way of the devil.
Yeah, honestly, like I know you're not the biggest movie buff in the world, but have you seen Mad Max Fury Road?
No, but I'm very familiar with the general goings-on of that movie.
Yeah, that Sam Hubbard on the sideline with the oxygen mask afterward, looking like a Morton Joe. Just, oh my God, it's going to stay with me forever. But the Bengals, they didn't play their best game, and I understand the concerns moving forward with that offensive line issue. But at the same time, the Bills did not play a particularly good game, and I think that they have, and they were 13.5-point favorites, and they almost lost to Skylar Thompson and the Dolphins. Now, obviously, some fluky stuff happened in that one, but the Bills, they have turnover issues, and the turnover issues reared their ugly heads at home last week. I'm not going to pretend like those problems are going to be fixed in 1 week going up against a better defense that is the Bengals. So to see them favored by basically a touchdown, I'm out on the Bills at that number, and we'll get into it a little bit more, but I might be way out on that number. So that's the one that really stuck out to me. And the Eagles, just because the Giants play everyone close, Dable's a great coach, and the Eagles would have to win this one by more than a touchdown. And we saw last week with teams like the Bills and the Bengals, where yes, they were playing teams that on paper they are big mismatches for and overqualified, but getting those first playoff game jitters out, like I think that's kind of a real thing sometimes. And we can see it happen. We've seen, teams coming off the bye in the playoffs look a little bit rattled. They obviously didn't have a bye last year, so they're not used to it the same way like the Chiefs are every year. So I feel like the Giants could give them a bit of a game here.
I got a whale of a stat for you, John, on those 1 seeds. I think you're totally right, especially when it comes to a team like Philly that with this core doesn't necessarily have like a ton of playoff experience to fall back on. I think it's one thing if you're the Chiefs or even the Bills, you've kind of been in these situations over the last couple of years, you know how to handle it, but that's not the case with the Eagles. This is via the Action Network. I publish this article every week. It's one of my favorite reads, so make sure you go check that out. I did not do this research on my own. Evan Abrams is the guy from the Action Network who put it together. Only once in the last 8 seasons, John, have both 1 seeds covered in the divisional round, and it's only happened twice in the last 2 decades. However, in that span, since 2003, both 1 seeds have gone 0-2 against the spread 8 times. So almost half the time. I mean, it's highly likely that at least one of these teams is not covering, and there's a decent chance that one of them ends up losing outright, which it's hard to imagine that happening, right? I mean, I think if you said to me right now, like, I am telling you one of these teams is going to lose, to me it has to be Philly, right?
Yes, it does. I think it comes to the lack of playoff experience, like you're alluding to, and I think that the Giants, on paper, that they're probably less talented than like the Jaguars are going up against the Chiefs, but I really like the Brian Dable, the coaching staff, and their ability to figure things out and just kind of drag teams into playing the type of game that they want to play. They didn't totally succeed in that against the Eagles, like the first time that they played when everyone was at full strength or full-ish. I guess the Giants weren't.
Well, that's the thing. Sorry, not to cut you off, but like,
Yeah.
I just don't know that we could take that much from that game, and we can't take anything from Week 18 when the Giants sat starters, Hurts coming off the injury, whatever. The Eagles needed the game, they got it. Big deal, but. In Week 14, the Giants were so banged up. Like, Saquon Barkley ended up playing in that game, was injured going in, was more injured going out. They had injuries all over the offensive line. They had injuries on defense. Like I'm not trying to stump for the Giants necessarily. Like, I do think the Eagles win this game, but I also don't think that was necessarily the most representative sample. And it also feels to me like the Giants have a newfound sense of confidence, especially with how they won last week.
Yeah, they absolutely do. They've really turned it on basically since that game. The Giants have. And Daniel Jones looking good. I thought that they found like a nice little mismatch, basically, especially in the first half against the Vikings, where they really had him running a lot. I think he racked up like 70 rushing yards in the first half last week. They kind of shut that down in the second half a little bit, but that's still yardage, that's still movement, that's still drive extending type of plays that end up in points. So I mean, it's crazy to say, but they need to keep a lid on Daniel Jones's mobility.
Yeah, I think that's been by far the biggest thing as far as unlocking Daniel Jones and kind of changing his reputation around the league. I mean, you and I were on the MKF show earlier today, and we were asked, if you're the Giants, do you give Daniel Jones that second contract? 8 weeks ago, I think I would have been very much on the fence, maybe leaning toward no. Now, it feels like a virtual certainty, unless there's just a complete disaster in this game, which is on the table. But there's something with Daniel Jones where like, he's never going to be, you're never going to feel about him the same way you feel about going into a playoff game with Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers or guys like that. But I think there's a case to be made that you can, with the right coaching staff, with the right scheme, with the right guys around him, you can absolutely succeed with a quarterback like Daniel Jones. And we did not know that as a certainty coming into this year.
No, we did not. And I guess the bottom line or the thing that's creeping into my head as we break down this Eagles-Giants game is like, are we giving too much credit for them beating a Minnesota team that we, kind of had circled as fraudulent for quite some time?
Very possibly, especially because they had just lost to that Minnesota team a couple weeks earlier in what was a very meaningful game for both sides. Both teams were essentially at full strength for that game. So yes, very, very possible. I think, it almost feels like the Giants like blew out the Vikings, and that wasn't the case this past week. I mean, Minnesota finally lost a 1-score game. But yeah, I viewed that as such a coin flip. And I felt like even though the score was relatively close, like the Giants kind of dominated that game. Like you never really felt like they weren't in control. And I know the Vikings are frauds 100%. We've been through all the numbers, the point differential, all that. So that is totally a good point. It's not like they toppled some Goliath last week, but I just still felt like the way they controlled it against what's ultimately, even if they're frauds, they're still a good team. The Vikings, I'm not saying it's like not a quality win for the Giants, but I think that is the number one question for this game is, there are some questions we'll talk about on the Eagles side too, but it's how exactly do you value what happened last week? Because it was impressive, but you're going up against a completely different animal, especially on defense when you're talking about Philly relative to the Vikings.
Yeah, Philly's defense is, something else. It's deep. It's got talent at every single level. I think their secondary is really, really strong. And that it's also a team that I think Jim Coventry might have mentioned it on the XM show earlier this week that like they had like 70 sacks this year. Just absolutely getting after the quarterback. Again, Jones, the mobility, the escapability, maybe they're able to limit the sack number because, sacks are just absolute drive killers, especially in the postseason. So you got to avoid those at all costs. But the Eagles defense is definitely for real. However, if the Giants defense is able to bow up and keep a lid on the big plays to AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, unlike they weren't able to do back in December, then all of a sudden the Eagles off their rhythm a little bit. If Jalen Hurts isn't running the way that he was pre-injury, then that's another big concern for them, because I'm not sold that Miles Sanders is totally equipped to carry the load. I think that he needs some help from the quarterback rushing threat in order to really be at his full effectiveness. So all of a sudden, if the Eagles kind of have to adjust on the fly here, that's where Dable really wants to put them.
The Eagles were not good defending mobile quarterbacks this season. Fourth last in the NFL in terms of total rushing yards surrendered to quarterbacks. And look, some of that could be matchup based. It's like if you play Justin Fields twice, like the Lions are dead last by a mile, and that's because Justin Fields went off against them 2 separate times. But it's not a plus by any means for the Eagles. And it's ironic, you'd think having a running quarterback on your own side, maybe you'd be a little bit better at kind of scheming that and defending against it. But I think it's, it goes without saying, Daniel Jones needs to be effective on the ground or the Giants aren't winning, right? I'm not saying he has to run 12 times for 85 yards, but it can't be 3 carries for 12 yards.
No, and I don't think we'll see that. I think that it has to be a big part of this Giants game plan. Now whether he's ripping off 7-8 yards a carry, different story. But I definitely do see Jones pushing for the 8 to 10 carry type of number.
So I'll rattle off a few more numbers that I have on this game. A couple of these kind of pertain to a couple games. One, only 64% of teams favored by between 7 and 11 points in the divisional round end up winning outright. So we're looking at you Chiefs and we're looking at you Eagles. The numbers imply that one of those teams is going to lose outright this weekend. The Giants and the Jags, John, are the first pair of teams who began the year with 100-1 Super Bowl odds or longer to end up making the divisional round. First time that's happened since 1987. So we're talking 35 plus years. Daniel Jones, 17-5 ATS as a road dog in his career. So there are a decent amount of numbers that point you in favor of the New York Giants in this game. I'm with you. We'll reveal kind of our full picks as we go along. I think the Eagles win, but I think the Giants cover this game. I just don't really think, the first Eagles matchup notwithstanding, I don't really think the Giants are the type of team that gets blown out very often. Now we'll see. The one thing that has now kind of skewed my opinion a little bit of the Eagles is what happened with Dallas and Tampa Bay on Monday night. I was on Dallas to win and cover that game. I was not on Dallas to just blow Tampa Bay out of the water and make that a laugher for 3.5 quarters. And, I think Dallas and Philly kind of closed the season in similar ways. Obviously with Philly, you have the injury. That was a big part of it, but both of them kind of limped into the playoffs. You didn't really feel great about the vibes, the way they closed out the final 3 or 4 weeks of the season. And clearly it didn't matter at all for Dallas. So now I'm wondering, it's am I reading too much into that for Philly?
Yeah, we definitely could be. I mean, this is a team that, we're it's human nature to get more concerned or give more weight to what we've seen more recently. But, the Eagles were, pretty clearly the best or, 1B type of team in the NFC all season, with the Niners not even really arriving to the party in that discussion until McCaffrey showed up. And, we didn't know that Brock Purdy was going to do what he was going to do, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes to the Eagles, yeah, that could absolutely be a thing where we've seen teams kind of limp in. You get the week off. That definitely helps get everyone, closer to 100%. But, Sirianni, young coach. Not that Dable is super experienced as a head coach in his own right, but, I don't give some sort of big coaching advantage to Sirianni to he's absolutely, I'm not even going to think twice about him having his guys ready to go. I think that the point's well taken, but I still don't fully trust Philly in this spot for whatever reason.
Yeah, you would have liked to see them just have one statement game before the playoffs, right? And the timing of the Hurts injury is the biggest thing. For all we know, if he stays healthy, he cruises to an MVP and they just steamroll their way through the end of their schedule, and we're not even having this discussion. So I totally get that. But that's something that we haven't really touched on is the Hurts injury, and he's going to play. He played in week 18. Like, it's not really a concern as far as like his availability goes. Like, I don't think he's going to be limited, but if he's at all limited as a runner, to me, that changes things significantly for the Eagles, because even when Gardner Minshew is in there, we saw like this could still be an offense that puts up points. They scored a ton of points on a great Dallas defense, but not having that rushing threat really changes things. But to me, I expect Jalen Hurts to be out there and look like MVP candidate Jalen Hurts. What are you kind of expecting on that front?
Well, it's good that he already has one game of playoff experience, even if it wasn't great. I think that's like a huge learning experience for him last year against Tampa Bay. But I don't know. I feel like there could still be some jitters. I feel like the Giants are going to come into this one pretty keyed up on slowing him down. Maybe throw some looks at him that he hasn't seen. Wink Martindale, famous for his blitz emphasis and his ability to disguise stuff and send guys from all over the place to get after the quarterback. So if Hurts kind of is seeing things that he's not used to, then we could see a bit of a struggle from him.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're spot on there. Let's see. Before we get into these other three games a little bit deeper, which game do you, of these four, and we can include Jags Chiefs in there, which one has the biggest blowout potential? And if KC beating the Jags by 30 is too obvious, which of the other three could you see devolving into a true blowout?
So my pick would probably be the Chiefs, just because I think that they are, again, I'm leveraged on the Bengals winning it all, but I would say that the Chiefs would be my pick right now to win it all. But I would say the Niners blowing out the Cowboys. We talked about it a bit on the MKF show, the rest factor, where the Niners basically have 8 days to get ready for this one. The Cowboys have 6. I think that's very important. And I think that the Niners just kind of are rolling. Like, talk about the making a statement. They've been doing that, basically the entire last month, just really laying waste to pretty much everyone that comes in their path. They're so complete. Purdy is playing well. That you have Deebo Samuel, you have Brandon Ayuk, you have George Kittle, who's gotten going. You have McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell. And that's just the offense. The defense is nasty as well. D'Amico Ryans has really put it together for them. You got just stars all across the front. Love Fred Warner. I think he's one of the best players in the league, period, right now. So, there's so much to like about this team. And we've seen Mike McCarthy teams and we've seen Cowboys teams in the past just kind of wilt in the postseason. So, if the Niners kind of get things going early, they could really kind of put it on Dallas, I think.
I think so too. I think we're going to know pretty quickly, if Dallas is going to be bringing it in this game. And to be fair, they got off to a relatively slow start against Tampa Bay. Both teams did. It looked like it was kind of a punt fest early on, and then Dallas, found something and was able to kind of be off and running. But I when it comes to Dallas, and I guess we could just kind of shift full on now into this game, which is the late game on Sunday night. You mentioned the rest factor. I think it's actually a big deal. Like 2.5 days, pretty big difference when you're looking at when these teams last played. The biggest thing for me with Dallas is, can they play another clean game? Can they go back-to-back weeks without one single turnover? And I get that's a lot to ask. They could probably turn it over once and still have a chance to win this game. If they commit multiple turnovers, it's not happening. Like, you're just not getting away with that against San Francisco. And the on Monday against Tampa Bay, that was their first game since all the way back in week 11 that they did not commit a turnover. And week 11 was the only time since week 5 that they had not committed a turnover. So the numbers suggest that, what happened in Tampa Bay is somewhat of an anomaly. Like, obviously we know what Dallas can do when they're operating at full strength. They've had plenty of games where they've blown teams out this year, but taking care of the ball, that has not been their MO.
No, it hasn't. Dak, for having missed several games, didn't he tie the interception lead this year?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so that he definitely needs to play the clean game himself. Ezekiel Elliott, I think, is also a problem. Like, if say Dak is not quite as sharp as last week and they need an answer on the ground, like, Ezekiel Elliott has just been plodding of late. And, Tony Pollard, obviously he's exciting and everything, but I just don't know if he's that guy that is going to consistently extend drives for you. The explosive plays are obviously there for him, especially in comparison to Zeke. But I think you'd feel a lot more comfortable if we could see like a vintage Zeke performance baked in here. But I don't necessarily believe that's coming back.
I don't know if that exists anymore for Ezekiel Bettis. I think he's just kind of he's the ground and pound guy. He's like their like goal line fullback at this point. So during the 11-game winning streak for the 49ers, they have a 23-5 turnover margin. So not only are they not turning it over, they have not committed multiple turnovers in any of those games, but they have 5 individual games where they committed 1. They're forcing turnovers at a crazy rate during that span. So like it just like I want this to be a competitive game. I think it can be a competitive game, but I'm a little surprised that this line was hanging around at 3.5 for much of the week. It's up to 4 now at BetMGM. To me, that's right. Like I know it's like the Brock Purdy narrative is going to be there. We have to talk about it, but it's been bulletproof at this point. They've had a couple scares, but they really haven't been tripped up. And I think that running game and I think the defense can really carry them here. I don't trust Dallas to be clean. That's really more so what it comes down to. I don't think there's that much of a difference in talent between these two teams. Like when Dallas plays its best, it could beat San Francisco. No question about that. I just don't really trust Dallas to have another one of those games, especially twice in a row.
Right. That's what it comes down to. And so, yeah, I think on the Niners side, we were talking about how it's an anomaly for the Cowboys to go a game without a turnover. Like, I think sometimes if you're running super hot as far as takeaways are concerned, what do you do if that goes away? But Cowboys are a team that tends to, kind of help you on that front. But, the thing is also like if Purdy kind of looks a little bit pedestrian in this one, I just still feel like the Niners can adjust on the fly and get the ground game going with. So like they have kind of like fail safes built into this offense now where and at the time, what did you think of the McCaffrey trade? I mean, I personally thought that they like gave up too much. And I also felt like, okay, like McCaffrey's great and he's the best running back that they've had in San Francisco in quite some time. But the Shanahan system kind of just proves that you can put anyone in there and get production out of it. But now, I mean, that looks like, type of a home run trade.
He's definitely the best running back since Kevin Barlow, I would say, in San Francisco. I mean, it looks like a genius move for sure. I was with you. I wouldn't say I just didn't have a strong opinion on it. I was like, okay, that's cool. I mean, I want to see McCaffrey in that system, and I think he's proved that he's almost more valuable in the Niners system than he was in Carolina. And I think the fact that Carolina just kind of kept rolling without him says a lot as well. That I think he's one of those guys that if you use him correctly, then you can kind of see what he could be in the perfect system. And I think that's what we've seen since that trade happened. I almost think his ability as a pass catcher is more important than what he could do as a runner. Like the running, like, yeah, he's an elite running back, even if you take away the pass catching, but there are a lot of guys who are relatively comparable to him as a runner. There are not many guys who could do both. And they might have the 2 best guys in the league at that when it comes to him and Deebo Samuel. So seeing it from that perspective, like I totally get it. It looks like a great move, especially if they do go on even to make the Super Bowl. I think that would be deemed a rousing success as far as that trade goes. But the way they've used him, I mean, it makes total sense. And they've also been committed to running him on the ground. Like he has a lot of high carry games since that trade.
Yes, he does. And so that they're getting the most out of it so far. I guess just like at the time, I didn't see them being a running back away. And they still had Jimmy Garoppolo as their starting quarterback back then. But obviously things have changed. And yet, this is a Niners team that's as dangerous as any in the NFC or maybe even the NFL overall.
Saw a good note from Josh Dubow, I think that's how you pronounce it, of the Associated Press. 49ers are the 6th team since the merger to lead the league in turnover margin, points per game allowed, and yards per game allowed. And 3 of the other 5 have won the Super Bowl. 2013 Seattle, 2002 Bucks, 85 Bears. The 06 Ravens are on that list, by the way.
Boy, that was
2019 Patriots.
That was a tough one. I went to that loss. I think it was 15-9 Indianapolis, and like a cold, rainy day in Baltimore. No touchdowns were scored. That was the McNair year, and then the Ravens went into the toilet the following year. Fired Brian Billick, then brought in Harbaugh. Rest is history.
All right, so I want to make sure we get this BetMGM read in here before we continue. I won my best bet last week. I'm sneaky hot right now.
Yeah.
Went with the 49ers minus 9.5. You were on Cincy 9.5. We just got a bad number there. It was the right pick.
I thought so too. But rules are rules, and last week you were very accommodating to me because of the travel, of the jet lag, and so on. But I am willing to fall on the sword and pay my just dues for my giving out a bad best bet. So therefore, I will go ahead and kick off divisional round with the king of sportsbook. Sign up with BetMGM using bonus code BETROTO, that's BETROTO, and receive up to $1,000 in bet credits. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Mississippi, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Puerto Rico, Tennessee, Virginia, Washington, D.C., West Virginia, Wyoming, or Ontario only must be 21 years or older to wager, 19 or older in Ontario. This is a new customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable bet credits. Credits expire 7 days from issuance. Excludes Michigan disassociated persons. Please gamble responsibly. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado, D.C., Kansas, Louisiana, Nevada, Wyoming, or Virginia, 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-GAMBLER in Indiana, Maryland, New Jersey, or West Virginia, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Call or text the Tennessee Red Line at 800-889-9789 in Tennessee, or call 1-888-777-9696 in Mississippi. In Ontario, if you have questions or concerns about your gambling or someone close to you, please contact Connects Ontario at 1-866-531-2600 to speak to an advisor free of charge. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Ohio, Utah, and other states where prohibited. Promotional offers not available in Nevada and New York.
Hey, well done. No notes for me. Could not have gone better. Let's make sure we're trading off again next week.
Yeah, let's do that. It had been so long since I did the full solo. I was like doing the Freebird solo just by myself. I mean, it's just like minutes on end with a lot of.
Yeah, we need guys like fanning you with a towel right now on the sideline. I feel like you just brought back like a 105-yard kickoff return.
It's similar to I don't know if this is Sports Center commercial with Rich Eisen, but he goes to commercial and then like all these like alarms are going off. He backs off from the desk and like a boxing trainer comes up and like gives him a bucket and he spits in it, and then someone gives him like a nice hot tea to sip on. Yep. I need that right now.
Yeah, you did it dignified. You did the right thing. And I completely appreciate you accepting your penance for, again, being on the right pick, but just we got a bad number. But forget it. It's in the past. We're going to be both on the winning end this week. I have no doubt about that. All right, so we've broken down Cowboys, Niners, and Giants, Eagles. For posterity here, let's give our official picks. Where are you going ATS on both of these games?
So I will go Giants against the spread plus 7.5. And I will go, where am I going? I guess I will go with the Cowboys. As counter as that sounds to everything we just talked about, I think that there's just something to be said about the possibility of the Cowboys A game and that being enough, and the difficulty with some of those historical numbers of some of these big, or not big home favorites, but I think that San Francisco could end up having to really grind this one out. And with it being at 4, again, that's something where when you sit down and take a look at the lines early on in the week, that's the one that stuck out the most to me. It's like, interesting. I would have expected that one to be, basically what the Bills have against the Bengals, something like that. But the fact that it's low and it strikes me as low kind of makes me think that it's the right side. So I will go with the Cowboys.
Okay. I'm with you on the Giants. That was a unanimous pick in RotoWire staff picks this week. Everybody's on Giants 7.5. I like the Eagles to win outright. I love the Giants to cover. I'm going with the 49ers here. We had it at 3.5 in staff picks. I still feel pretty good about it at 4, of course. Not a huge difference there. I think you laid out a good case. Like if the Cowboys play their A game, if they don't turn it over, I think we do get a really close game. It could be a field goal either way, but I just don't love the chances of that happening. Short rest for Dallas, going all the way across the country. And the 49ers, like we said, they've been bulletproof for the better part of the last 2 months. However, Michael John McCarthy, 12-7-1 ATS in the playoffs as a head coach. Third most profitable ATS coach in the postseason. Not a number that I expected.
No, perception. Maybe us living in Wisconsin for so long kind of colors our view of old Mike there. But yeah, by and large, he's, and I'm not making a joke, he's done well against the number in the postseason. You can't deny it.
Wow. All right. I believe you that you aren't making a joke. At the same time, I also don't. By the way, no real weather concerns in either of these games. Philly, we're looking at mid 40s, not a ton of wind, no precipitation, a little bit warmer out on the West Coast. I think the atmospheric river seems to have passed. I feel like we were lied to, by the way. Like I was going unders on a bunch of 49ers props last week, thinking that this would just be like a soupy, muddy game. Like where was this like torrential rain that was supposed to be coming?
Yeah, they really ginned that up, didn't they? Like on the Fox pregame, they were like, "My God!" And then it gets a little bit closer to kick, and it's like, actually, the sun's peeking out, seems fine, feels good. All right, sorry, bye.
Yeah, I think I compared it to that Bears game in what was that, week 1 or week 2 for the Niners. I'm like, oh, I don't know, man. They couldn't get by the Bears. Like, okay, no concern whatsoever. Sometimes the TV cameras can play tricks, and it doesn't look as bad as it actually is in person. But yeah, that was a just really complete non-factor last week. Any thoughts on the totals in these games, by the way? We got high totals across the board. Cowboys, Niners, 46. That's the lowest total of the week. 48 in Giants, Eagles.
I think I like the over in the Cowboys 49ers game. I think that one's going to be played in the mid to high 20s on both sides. And I think that I would like the under in that Giants game because I like the Giants to cover, and I don't think that they cover by getting into a shootout with the Eagles. So I think that's going to be something that's closer to like a 24-20 type outcome.
Okay, that tracks to me. We'll have more notes on that Philly Giants total to come in the teaser section. So hang on to your hats for that. All right, let's go back to Jags Chiefs. We'll finish up this game. We touched on it a little bit in the beginning. I'm on the Chiefs 8.5 here. I do think the Jags show up. I do think they make this a game. I don't think it's possible that they could get off to a worse start than last week. I think you have to keep in mind that they also got off to a pretty rough start against Josh Dobbs in week 18. I think chances are that comes around and they're at least a little more prepared and they're not just getting, completely smacked in the mouth in the first half. But with that said, I mean, they were +3 in the turnover battle, +4 if you count a opening onside kick, which they recovered when they played the Chiefs in week 10. Still ended up losing that game. Still did not end up covering. They lost by 10 at Arrowhead. That was the first game that a team had a +3 turnover differential and lost by double digits in 5 years. It was only the 4th time in the last 15 years. So, some of these numbers, you kind of start talking to yourself one way and then you're saying like, well, that can't possibly happen again. But to me, it's like, what are the chances that the Jags, win the turnover battle resoundingly twice in a row at Arrowhead? Probably not good. So I'm trying to canvas as many stats and opinions as I can to drum up some belief in the Jags. But ultimately, I think we come out of this game saying fun season for the Jags. They put up a good fight, but the Chiefs are just too good.
Yeah, I mean the win last week, not to take anything away from the Jags, but if there was a team on this postseason card that could blow a game like that, it would be the Chargers, and that they were on the road. So Chiefs at home, Arrowhead, Mahomes. I just have such a hard time seeing Mahomes not playing next weekend.
It's literally never happened. I mean, he's going for his 5th straight AFC title game. He's never lost in the wild card or the divisional.
I'm not sick of him yet, but I think we're going to get there eventually. Although he's always been more fun to watch than Tom Brady. But that's a side discussion. But no, I feel like the Chiefs are they're so complete that they've proven that they can absorb the loss of Tyreek Hill and keep clicking on offense. The defense is good, opportunistic. Chris Jones is a scary, scary individual in the middle. He could blow up that line, get after Lawrence. I feel like the Chiefs end up winning this one by 10. And I think that is much more likely than them having to hold on by less than a touchdown.
First of all, you're right about Tom Brady. I don't want to let that throwaway comment go. Like, has there ever been a more boring, like, GOAT in any sport? It's like nobody was ever like, man, Michael Jordan, he was so boring. Like, Tom Brady would be, it's like if Tobias Harris became like the greatest NBA player ever.
Thank you. I mean, he's ridiculously, precise. You got to give him that. But like, there's no wow plays in his highlight reel. It feels like it's just like well-placed slants to Deion Branch.
I will say one thing that plays in the Jags' favor. I did see that Jackson Mahomes is back on TikTok as of earlier this week. That can't be a positive for Kansas City. I'm not sure that it'll ultimately affect what happens on the field, but it's not a plus for the Chiefs. I think that's a check in favor of the Jags.
How long was the hiatus?
I'm not really sure. I haven't been following this all that closely, but I just saw like a bunch of stories on Twitter that's like Jackson Mahomes is back just in time for the playoffs. So we'll see. We'll see if that ends up, moving the line at all over the next couple of days here. I would expect probably not, but we'll find out. I have a few numbers that I want to throw out about this game, and then we'll move on. Mahomes 7-2 straight up, 6-3 ATS at home in the postseason. Like I said, never lost in the first or the second round. The Chiefs are now favored for their 14th playoff game in a row. That is the longest streak in the Super Bowl era. Pretty insane. Andy Reid off a bye, 28-6 straight up, 18-2 straight up at home after a bye. That's, of course, including regular season. And the one thing we haven't really touched on with this game, and you and I, we don't really get too deep into props in this game. Whatever you could find for Travis Kelce's receiving yard prop in this game, I'd be looking to hammer that pretty good. I don't know where that sits exactly right now. It's at 79.5, over at BetMGM, 79.5. And I could tell you relative to some other inferior sports books, that's a pretty friendly number. I would be hammering that pretty good. Travis Kelce needs 99 yards to set the all-time postseason receiving record by a tight end. That is held by Gronk. He has 6 consecutive 95-plus yard playoff games. Insane.
The dude is such a machine, and like him versus one of Andre Sisco or Rayshon Jenkins. Jenkins obviously had a good year, but that's such a mismatch. If you get one of the linebackers on him, like it's a wrap right there. And I think that this year is one of my biggest fantasy faux pas. Was thinking not necessarily that by extension of Tyreek Hill being gone, that Kelce won't be as effective. I just he's like 6 months younger than Gronk. Like I just kind of figured that maybe he starts to slow down. No, God, no. He is still just as good as he's been in recent years. And he's just like, he plays like a bull in a china shop. And it's just, he's going to be knocking dudes over, getting into the end zone. I love the more in the over on 79.5. Anytime touchdown score. I would even consider taking a gander at 2+ touchdowns for Travis Kelce, honestly.
You read my mind. I'm looking at that right now. Plus 260 for Travis Kelce to score twice in this game. I mean, his touchdown production has been down over the last few games, really dating back to like midway through the regular season. Does feel like there could be a pretty major breakout coming. And Jacksonville, as you alluded to, the personnel, not great defending tight ends. And they were bottom 5 in the league in terms of fantasy points allowed to that position during the regular season. So could be a big day. Will be a big day. I feel pretty confident saying for Travis Kelce. All right, let's get to Bengals-Bills. Last game on the slate. This is the afternoon game on Sunday. Bills 5.5-point favorites at BetMGM. Total sitting at 48.5.
Yeah, I'm going to be visiting my grandparents in South Carolina this weekend, and I'm going to be rudely leaving right after breakfast to make sure that I get back in front of a television on Sunday afternoon. I'm not going to say why.
Police escort back to Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm just going to be like, oh, guys, like I got work tomorrow. Sure, that'll. I need a good 16 hours of sleep, so I got to get back by 2:59. But yeah, I cannot wait for this game. I think it's such a great matchup. We haven't really gotten, among like the great quarterbacks, great young quarterbacks in the AFC. We haven't seen a whole lot of Allen Burrow clashes just yet. And so getting this one here in this spot with the right to go to the AFC Championship game, it's in Buffalo, going to be completely raucous. I can't wait. I've thought that this was like, one of the best potential matchups in the postseason period. Like it could end up on paper just like being more watchable as a game than the Super Bowl. Obviously, you're going to watch the Super Bowl, but that's just to say that we have two, young legacies a little bit on the line, and obviously the Bills favored by a decent little bit here. The suggestion being that they can win this one by a touchdown, but again, like I alluded to earlier, the Bengals, that offensive line is an issue. I think I'd be more concerned with it if Von Miller was healthy on the other side. But, Greg Rousseau has turned into a nice player out of Miami for Buffalo. AJ Epinesa, not quite there yet. But I don't know. I feel like the Bills, the old line has been said about them over the last couple of years is it's a defense built to slow down the Chiefs. But can it slow down the Bengals? That's the question.
That is a very good question. And I think this number is a couple points higher than I would have expected if these teams were at full strength. And I think the number one question, especially talking to our guy, Jeff Erickson on the XM show all week, he's a Bengals fan. He is very, very concerned about the offensive line holding up potentially. And I think at this point, likely being down 3 starters with Jonah Williams going out last week with that dislocated kneecap. Totally fair question. Like you could trace a lot of the games that the Bengals have struggled in, not only this year, but last year, is when Joe Burrow's under siege. If he's being sacked 3, 4, 5, 6 times, they more often than not, they lose those games. And you don't necessarily want to be down 3 linemen going into a matchup against the Buffalo Bills. So I get it. I still think the Bengals find a way to cover this, though. I'm not quite as confident as I am about the Giants covering, 7.5. It's just a friendlier number. But I don't think the Bengals roll over here. And I think if Burrow is sacked 3 or fewer times, I think there's a pretty decent chance Cincinnati could win this outright.
Yes, I think so as well. And when it comes to the offensive line thing, once again, like your point's well taken. If Burrow's getting just sacked every play, then this is a non-starter. But it's not like Burrow's used to having this amazing offensive line at any point in his professional career. Like he's used to, what he's seen for the most part. And the Bengals, did well, at least in terms of its endeavor to bolster the offensive line. It didn't really pan out the way they probably would have hoped, especially now with all the injuries, but Burrow knows what to expect. It's not like, again, to bag on Tom Brady, but like Brady needs a very good offensive line or otherwise it's curtains. Like Burrow kind of is a little bit cagier, knows how to get rid of the ball if the offensive line he knows that it's not holding up all that well. So I think that they're going to be able to adjust. And then for the sack issues that Burrow could be facing here, what that could end up being neutralized by Josh Allen and his recklessness with the ball. I mean, the turnovers have been an issue for Allen and the Bills this year. So I mean, if it ends up being a wash in that respect, where Burrow gets sacked 5 times, but the Bills turn it over twice, then we have ourselves kind of level footing once again.
Yeah, turnovers are a major factor here. And, the last 3 games for Buffalo, they've committed 3 turnovers in each. Chicago, New England, and then Miami last week. I mean, that's ultimately what enabled Miami to hang around. And for a while there, looked like they might actually win that game. I mean, that fumble touchdown completely flipped that game. Buffalo was up 17-0 in the first quarter. So I feel like even if Cincinnati gets off to a rough start, even if they fall behind 14-0 at the end of the first quarter, Buffalo has proven time and time again that they will let a team like the Miami Dolphins with Skylar Thompson back into a game. You can't get away with that against the Cincinnati Bengals. I don't care how many linemen you're down. If Buffalo plays the exact same game this week as it played last week, it will lose.
Yeah, I mean, that was a B- C+ game from them. They can't survive against Cincinnati with that. And I never quite understand it when it comes to Josh Allen and the fumbling issues, because everyone just talks about how big the mitts are. He gets stripped a lot.
He runs the ball and holds it like Shady McCoy. You got to tuck it, man. You just got to tuck it. A lot of them are kind of, it's not like he's being hit blindsided. He's kind of trying to stiff arm a guy and holding the ball out there. And yeah, it's reckless. There's no other way to describe it. And it does feel like at some point that's going to come back to haunt them. Maybe it's this round, maybe it's, next round against Kansas City, maybe it's in the Super Bowl. Who knows? Do you think we get a DeMar Hamlin appearance in pregame, by the way? Because if so, I mean, that place is going to be beyond charged up.
Yeah, that is certainly that's going to be unbelievable if he is out there and saying hey to the crowd. It's going to be insane. So, like, probably set the decibel level at that stadium. I was listening to an interview with Booger McFarland last week, and they were asking him about what factor does like emotion and a charged up crowd, like what does that really where does that impact the game, if at all? And Booger was pretty frank about it. He said that it does have an impact, but it's early. So if the Bills are able to capitalize on that early, like their first drive, they come out and score a touchdown, and then the Bengals go 3 and out, then I think that there is a quantifiable impact from this. But if the Bengals can kind of survive, get out of the first half of the first quarter with kind of level footing with the Bills there, then I think that that factor kind of goes by the wayside just a little bit.
Right. Well, and 2 weeks ago we saw the crowd's going wild, and Nyheim Hines brings back the opening kick, and then yet again they're somehow trailing that game to the Patriots in the second half. So it's like I just don't know what to do with this Buffalo team. Like when they're at their best, they're maybe probably the best team in the league, but you just feel like there's so much variance, and again I don't think you can get away with that against Cincinnati. Let's go to a few props from this game, then we'll move on and finish up here. A lot of low rushing yard totals this week. Like, it says a lot that Travis Etienne has the highest number on the board at BetMGM. He's at 70.5. How do you feel about Joe Mixon? 46.5 is the number.
So Mixon can underdeliver with the best of them among like talented running backs. We know
one of the
that
goats when it comes to underdelivering.
Yeah, he's impeccable at it, but this is a spot where they need him. And I think that the Bills, they're really good up front. I think the linebacking core can be a little bit oversold as far as how good it is. So I think with the Bengals being a little bit shorthanded in along the offensive line, to mitigate that pass rush a little bit, you have to get the run game going. And whether it is Mixon or Pirine, I know we're talking about Mixon here, but I think overarching statement that the Bengals do need to get some traction there on the ground. And I think Mixon, obviously option A for them. And I think that we're going to see him push for 15 plus carries. And I think with that in mind, I think he can clear that number.
Okay. Well, we'll see, man. I'm worried about the offensive line, of course, when it comes to Mixon, but if anything, I think they've kind of shown that they're willing to pound Joe Mixon to a fault at times, like especially earlier this season. It felt like they were running Mixon like a kind of a unnecessary amount. You look at some of like the carry totals, like he had multiple 20 plus carry games over the first half of the season and had the injury, and it hasn't been quite as severe these last few weeks, but I'm skeptical. I think if we get a shootout in this game, and again, total is 48.5, I think that's fairly likely. I think that shootout comes through the air. So like I'd be inclined to take the over on both Josh Allen and Joe Burrow passing yard props.
Okay. That totally understand there. And that following the total, they're not going to get there just by having this be the Nyheim Hines and Joe Mixon show or the James Cook show, Devin Singletary, the list goes on. But so, yeah, I mean, that makes sense if this game's going to flow that way. But I think that the Bengals, they might not be able to afford letting this one turn into that where they're in all these obvious passing situations all the time. So I think that this one might be a little bit more defensive heavy. For at least I see one outcome of this game going that way. So I'm going to go with I guess under for both of those quarterback passing props. Fair. And it doesn't feel great betting against either of those guys, but it just could be the shape that this game takes.
Man, it's getting pretty heated on this pod. Disagreement,
isn't it? Yeah,
tell you what,
real contentious.
You cut the tension with a knife right now. All right, let's touch on Super Bowl odds real quick. Then we'll do parlays and the teaser and get out of here. What's your favorite value bet right now? We'll do this, with each round going forward, and obviously, the field is going to get shorter and shorter. But if you had to place a bet right now for a team to win the Super Bowl, which odds do you like the best?
Well, I believe the Bengals might have dropped a little bit from last week. I think they were like maybe plus 750. Now they're 8-1. I like that. I like that a good bit. And then the Niners, that they are the highest best odds of the NFC teams at 4-1, but I still think 4-1 is a really nice number on them.
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying. If you like the Niners, jump on that now. That number is not going to get any lower, especially if they win this weekend. Eagles 5-1, Bengals 8-1, Cowboys 9-1, and then you got both the Giants and the Jags at 25-1. Certainly would not bet the Jags. The Giants, it's like I could see the Giants winning this game. I can't see them winning the Super Bowl. It's like could they catch Philly at the right time, win that game? It'll be the third meeting this season in division. Like, yeah, you could talk me into that. You can't necessarily talk me into them beating the 49ers and then beating the Chiefs, Bills, or Bengals. So I just think putting a future down on either of those long shots doesn't really make a lot of sense. But yeah, I'm with you. I think in terms of value, I would go Bengals. Totally makes sense that the Chiefs are the favorites. They're at plus 290, Buffalo 325. But yeah, Niners and Bengals, I think those are the best values. I have a quick trivia question for you, John, before we get to the parlays. Who was the last MVP to win the Super Bowl the same year that he won the MVP award?
So I'm going to go with Drew Brees.
That is a very good guess. I will tell you that is incorrect. So while I look up the list of MVPs, feel free to take another guess.
So if it's not him, it's obviously not Cam Newton, even though he made the Super Bowl that year that he won MVP. Didn't quite get it done. Matt Ryan did not get it done in his. So we're looking a little bit further back.
Yep.
Wouldn't be Roethlisberger.
Roethlisberger never won one, and Drew Brees actually never won an MVP either. That's what I was double checking.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna go. Would it have been Peyton Manning?
It would not have been Peyton Manning. A good guess. Manning won it in 03. He split it with McNair, and then 04, but did not win it the year that they won the Super Bowl. He also won the award in 08 and 09. We got to go all the way back to 1999, John. Kurt Warner is the last player to win a Super Bowl and the MVP to sweep both of those.
Man, it is so crazy that happened. Like, just out of I don't know. That just opens the whole story of Kurt Warner's career. And despite his best efforts with the movie to besmirch his own legacy, that dude was such a hoss.
He was a major hoss, major hoss. I mean, if you like kids our age, especially at the time, like if you didn't have a Marshall Faulk jersey or an Isaac Bruce jersey or a Torrey Holt jersey, like that was the team at that time.
What if they came out with a line because time wise it kind of lines up. Remember the Hulk hands? Yes. You get those, but like Torrey Holt hands, and they're just crooked fingers.
Angled. I didn't think we would be going down this entrepreneurial pathway, but I love it. I think this is officially on the record. It's officially trademarked. So if like Mattel or any other toy company is out there already thinking about this, nope, it's off limits. We got it.
Yep,
all right, John.
They got to come through us.
Yeah. Let's get to the parlays, and then we'll reveal the just red hot teaser of the week. Give me your most confident parlay here. We're not talking dog parlay, just the regular parlay of the week.
Okay, so these are all against the spread, and it pays out plus 1228. So give me the Chiefs, Giants, Bengals, and Cowboys to all cover.
Okay, I'm going Chiefs, Giants, Bengals, and 49ers to all cover. That also plays plus 1228. We've talked through all these games at this point. I think we know where we stand there. So let's move on to the underdog parlays of the week.
Okay, I will do Bengals money line and Dallas +4. That gives you plus 473 odds.
Okay, I like it. I'm going Bengals to cover 5.5, and I'm taking the Giants to cover 7.5. That gets you, only to plus 264. But we're not taking money lines here. We're going spreads, so can't expect too much. And by the way, we both were on the Bucks in our underdog parlay last week. Limited pickings there. I didn't love the Bucks, but you kind of had to throw them in there. Man, both of them would have hit had it not been for Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that was tough. And I was texting you during the game Monday, and I'd forgotten if I was on the over or the under for that one. But those Maher missed extra points really kind of did in the over. It would have cleared, fit not like by a lot, but it would have cleared with plenty of time left on the clock.
I want to bring that up, by the way. I totally forgot to mention it when we were talking about Dallas, San Francisco. Like, how does that factor in? Like, when you go about analyzing this game and kind of doing your research, like, is that in the back of your mind? Do you think there's any carryover for Maher?
There almost has to be. I mean, that was just such a meltdown on such a big stage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Cowboys got out of it just fine, but I mean, you know, did Maher escape unscathed? I think not. I think that's absolutely going to be on his mind. I think it's more than usual. It's going to be particularly loud in San Francisco when he's out there to kick, and that could be an issue. I could definitely see him missing another extra point in this one. I think he's got to, just like a shooter in basketball, on a cold streak, you got to see one go in. He did get to see one late in the game, so maybe that helps. But I think it's a dicey proposition to say that he plays a clean game, and clean's been like the operative word when it comes to Dallas.
Well, and he didn't even attempt a field goal in that game. Like, I think, extra points are one thing, but chances are at some point he's going to be taking a meaningful field goal in this game. And, it's not even about the result necessarily. I'm more curious to see how it affects the play calling for Dallas. If it's 4th and 4 and you're at the 35-yard line, like you have to think that you're at least now like 20% more likely to go for that.
I would think so, but Mario Puig, our colleague, brought up a good point that as bad as Maher has been on extra points, he is pretty money from distance as it comes to field goals. Like, I think he has the most 60-yard field goals of any kicker in the league. So, I mean, even more than Justin Tucker.
Yep.
So, I mean, there is something to be said for that. But yeah, I mean, I think that maybe McCarthy will like pick the absolute worst time to be an analytics guy and like go for 2 in like the worst spot possible, and then they miss it type of thing. I could see that. I could see that putting McCarthy's brain in a pretzel maybe more than Maher's.
Maybe the extra points are too close. Like, maybe they need to get like a personal foul on the initial extra point, back it up 15 yards, and then kick it.
Then his mind is completely clear. He's zen. He's in game breaker mode, and he's ready to go.
It's like 68-yard extra point, bangs it through, no problem.
Good for 80.
It's time for the teaser. We're hot on the teasers. I think we've hit 3 in a row now. We're going with another 7-pointer. Those have been kind to us. Last week, we teased the Niners down to 2.5. That was golden. We luckily teased the Bengals from 9.5 to 2.5. That one hit. Teased that Jags Chargers total down to 40.5. Wouldn't have mattered. Went over the 47.5 either way. But I feel pretty good about this one as well, John. We are going to involve the Philadelphia Eagles, teasing them from 7.5 down to 0.5. They just have to win. The Kansas City Chiefs, another obvious candidate here, teasing them down from 8.5 down to 1.5, close to essentially a money line on the Chiefs. And then we're bringing in another total. We're going to do it. We are going to tease the Giants-Eagles total from 48 to 55, and we're taking the under. I know you said you like the under on 48. That makes me feel even better about this.
I like it, man. You've been cooking with gas on these. I know that cooking with gas is quite a controversial
cooking
topic
with electricity.
Cooking with electricity these days. My burner with the hot spots. I actually have a gas stove. It's kind of wild, but yes, no, you've found the recipe and you've been cooking it up on these teasers. I love it.
All right. Well, I appreciate you saying that. If you want to tail us on the teaser, if you want to tail us, or if you want to go against us on the parlays, make sure you're doing that over at betmgm.com, BetMGM app. And of course, you're using that promo code BETROTO. That's BETROTO. You can receive up to $1,000 in bet credits with our promo code BETROTO. Jonathan, it's time to lock it up. Where are you going?
All right. Well, they did it to me in multiple ways last week. Neither of them were good. They not only didn't cover, but they also knocked my Ravens out of the playoffs. But you know what? You get back on the horse. I'm riding with the Bengals again. I think that they go into Buffalo and they keep this one close. You don't have to be so crazy as to say that they're going to do the money line. Let me do my thing, but I like them to cover the 5.5.
Okay. I just made a kind of a snap decision here. I don't love any of these lines nearly as much as I did a few from last week, but I'm going with the Chiefs. Call it an emotional hedge if you want, but I think 8.5, this could easily be 9.5. It wouldn't be insane if it was in the double digits. So I think you are getting some value here. I think you and I agree that the Chiefs probably win this game by 10, maybe exactly 10. They've already beat the Jags by 10 this year in a game where they were -3 on the turnover margin. As we said, I think that doesn't happen again. So, I was off the Jags last week. I was wrong. I hope I'm wrong again, but I have a sneaking suspicion that KC takes care of business here.
Yeah, I unfortunately I tend to agree with you. It sets up at least one half of the AFC Championship game being an excellent game, and either way, if the Chiefs win, you get either the rematch of that divisional game from last year or the AFC Championship once again. So I think that's what we're going to be looking at, and I think the Chiefs just kind of get her done here, unfortunately.
Wow. Larry the Cable Guy reference over an hour into the pod. Love to see that. All right, man. That's going to do
There's
it for
your
us.
sign. It's time to end the show.
Enjoy the visit to the grandparents this weekend. Hopefully you get out of there in time to catch those games. Are you coming back Saturday or Sunday?
I will be back Sunday, so
Okay.
we'll watch it together. They are football guys and gals, but I have the odds are crazy on them finishing the night game on Saturday. But yeah, so I'll be back here in Georgia to watch the three. Luckily, it's a 3:30 Eastern kickoff for that Bengals game.
Okay, man. Well, safe travels, and looking forward to all the games this weekend. Best of luck to you. Best of luck to everybody listening. And once again, if you are going to do some wagering on the NFL this weekend, make sure you're doing that over at BetMGM and on the BetMGM app.